So the first question, could you please share your experience as a domestic violence survivor?
Okay, this will probably sound crazy because it sounded crazy to me, but I guess for me, I just never identified with being a domestic abuse survivor. Those words were never used for what was happening to me. The being ignored and being yelled at and called names happened in my home. So when I married individuals that did that to me, I didn't think of it as abuse. I thought that's just what happens, right? And it's interesting because when Apostle invited me to the panel, I was like, why is she asking me to sit on the panel? But then she asked me to bring my book, and I thought, oh, she wants me to talk about what happened to me. And that's when it clicked that I am a domestic abuse survivor. And so for me, it's important that we use these words, that we identify what domestic abuse is, because it's not just being hit. It can really be internal, and it follows you. And it not only follows you, but it follows your children and your children's children. So, yeah, that's my experience.
Thank you. The next question. We will try to hold our applause until all the panelists have answered their questions. Thank you so much. So my next question, and the questions that I'm asking right now, it will be the same for you all. What have your experience taught you that you can leave with the audience today? What you've been through, what have you learned from it that you think will be beneficial to everyone that's sitting here today?
I think the thing that I have learned is you really have to deal with the things that happen to you. I never should have gotten married without dealing with what happened to me as a child. Because I didn't have words for it, it followed me. And so my advice is to take the time to know yourself, to know who you are and whose you are, right? Because now that I know who I am and my worth, it's gonna happen again because I know better. You know, once you know better, you do better.
Thank you. And so you all know, Ms. Iris Williams is the publisher for Apostle Marlene Sterling's book, Scars. So my last question for you, as a survivor, what was it like reading and publishing the book? Did it bring back any memories from what you've been through? What impact did that have on you, negative or positive?
Again, when Apostle approached me, I believe God had given me breadcrumbs to let me know that she was coming, because New York, there was a pull to come to New York, and I thought it was just for my birthday, which is tomorrow. So when she approached me, I thought, oh, okay, this must be what the pull is. And so when we got to talking about the book, and she sent me the audios, I mean, it went just like that, because I felt like her story was my story. I felt I could have written this without the physical abuse, but everything else that went with it. I felt like we were sisters in this. And there wasn't anything negative that I got from it, but the positive was I got to see myself in a different light. Again, I now identify as a domestic abuse survivor, but also how she overcame and what she's doing with her story. I've always been behind the desk, helping other people tell their stories, and even though I have written my story, I never talk about it publicly. I just kind of published the book, put it on the shelf, and kept going forward. And I think the thing that resonates with me with Apostle is her boldness and standing up in front of all the people who say you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't do this. She's doing it anyway. And she's doing it with grace and style And the book is full of wisdom and gems, and just reading the back of the book is just, she puts things in a way that make you go, okay. And she has this, it's almost poetic, the way that she writes. And then hearing her voice when she speaks, it sends chills all through me, because it's like you have an advocate, you have someone on your side. And so God bless you, and thank you for choosing, me to, go on this journey with you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And God has a way. If there is one piece of advice, I know you gave a few, but if there's just one piece of advice that you can offer to individuals here that may be single and planning on, getting married or entering in a relationship, what would that be?
I would say, I would say two things. One, flow from a place, come from a place, and work from a place of using your head and your heart simultaneously. Because he said this, and he said that, and I feel good, and I feel bubbly, and I feel the butterflies. That's a feeling, and it will pass. And I say work with the head, because your head won't steer you wrong if you really listen. There's wisdom there. There's knowledge. There's understanding. And if you're a child of God, you can be still and hear the voice of God saying, no, this is not the one. And then I would say to anyone, whether you're in Christ or not, look for the red signs. They are there. They are there. You will hear things. You will see things. Take the person you want to date. Take them around other people. See how they act. Go out with your friends. Ask where is his friends. And I have to say this today because this is the world we live in. Ask her, because they do beat too. If you're dating a woman, real talk, ask, can I go out with your friends? Can we all go out? Can my friends come with your friends? And, can we all go out together? Because you will see the behavior. You will see the behavior. And you will see the if you listen, you will see the red flags. And what they are little thumps. Little thumps. And I like to share that with the women that I serve, because if you don't listen and take heed to the little thumps, the attitudes, I don't like the way this look on you today, or you could have did your hair that way, I prefer your hair, you like your hair down, but I like your hair up, red flag. You got on red lipstick, but I really like purple, or I like neutral. Can you take that off for me? I'll get you a neutral one tomorrow. Red flag. I see you in that dress.
Talk about it.
I don't really like the length of it. You trying to attract somebody else? Or I prefer you in loose pants. He's just so protective. Look how he cares about me. No, red flag.
Red flag.
He's about to take your head off if you give him enough time. So I would say, look for the red flags. And don't push them away and say, no, that's not that, or he didn't mean it. Don't justify it. If it's revealing itself, honor it and run for your life.
Wow, good advice. Thank you so much, Pastor McIntosh. Often, always, we ignore the red flags. Often, always. But if we take the time, or, if we're going through, or if you're going through issues in your relationship and being abused in your relationship, and you really sit down and go back to the beginning, you will have noticed, if you had just taken the time to date, get to know that person, get to know those people that they hang out with, get to know family members, then you would have seen where you missed those red flags. So as the woman of God encouraged you tonight, please pay attention to the red flags. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Pastor Sabine Baruch. She's a domestic violence survivor and also author. So, Pastor Sabine, could you please share your experience as a domestic violence survivor and talk about the impact this has had on you, negative and positive?
God bless everyone. I want to jump on what my sister just said, red flag. I married red flag. I married potential. And the hoping I can fix him is going to get better. But I had my life on the line because he became a stalker. I had one that dictated the nail polish that I wear. If I wore red lipstick, you look like a Jezebel. If I wear weave, you look like all the names in the world. And at that point, I lost myself because I was at a place of desperation. A lot of the time, we're seeking for love in all the wrong places. Domestic violence had led me in a domestic violence shelter where my family couldn't know where I lived for months. My son was 4 years old at the time. He saw me being punched, being slapped. The skit, I was reliving my life because he will bring flowers and would want to make love to me. And I'm like, am I an animal right after this? One thing about me, I was very mouthy, so I would snap. What domestic violence did to me when I got to another relationship, everything sounded like the other individual. I had triggers. You couldn't say certain things to me because I would snap. I became an angry black woman. So I say this to say that stop dating potential. The person that you date is not the person that you marry. The person that you date, your fiance, is not your husband. And as years go by, the red flags are there, but we want to bypass them because we are in love. And later on, it's going to come and bite you in your behind.
Thank you so much for sharing, Pastor Sabine. One more question. Every situation that we go through in life has embedded some lesson or message in there. What lesson have you learned from your experience, and what advice can you pass on to someone in this room that is entering into a new relationship?
The signs are there. Don't ignore it for the sake of love, for the sake of you trying to fix them. Only God can fix individual. They're not your project. The signs are there. Don't ignore them. You come first. Your safety. A lot of us, we are being abused mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. People think it's just the physical abuse. What about the mental abuse? What about the spiritual abuse? What about the emotional abuse? You come first.
Thank you again, Pastor Sabine. Yes, and you heard that. You come first. You come first. Do not ignore it. Put yourself first. Put your well-being first. You know, I know this is not related, but I am a cancer survivor. And God bless you. Wow, God bless you. God bless you. And I remember when I was ill, prior to my diagnosis, everyone comes before me. It was my husband, At that time, I did not have a close relationship with God, so God was nowhere on my radar for reasons I will not disclose today. But it was my husband first, it was my children, it was work, it was everything else except for me. But when I got diagnosed and I was going through my treatments, I remember laying on my bed and I thought to myself, like, wow, I've spent all my life. I mean, I started family very young. And I spent all my life taking care of others, looking about the well-being of others, and ignoring myself. And on that bed, I could not help my husband, and I could not help my children. I couldn't help anyone. And so it is very important for us to put ourselves first, think about our well-being, because if we're not well, we can't take care of others. And if we're not here, we can't take care of our children. So great advice, Pastor Sabine. Thank you so much. We have our final panelist tonight, and she is Sophia Johnson Murphy, a domestic violence survivor. Definitely our last on this panel, but not least so. Sophia, could you also share your experience with being a domestic violence survivor and talk about the impact this has had on you?
Good night, everyone. My abuse was mostly verbal. Physical came in, but afterwards. There were times I was told that I'm ugly. I am not going to make it without him. My daughter is not his child. He doesn't want her around, and a lot more. And I believed all the negative words. Mostly why I believed at that time, most of my family, my mother, my dad, my sisters, they all were here, and I was alone back home in Jamaica. So his family became my family. But the abuse did not only came from him, but it started coming from his mom. They spoke badly about my daughter. That's my first daughter, which is not his child. And it reached to a point where I had to make a decision. I was not strong enough for myself, but I had to make a decision because my eldest daughter, she heard all of those words. When the physical abuse came in, she saw it. She was in the middle trying to break us apart. And when she realized that I was not stepping out, she became resentful to me. I knew at one point she hated me, Pastor Sabine. And I had to, because he did not want her around, because she started speaking out at the age of 13, 14, because I met him when she was just 6 years old. So she, her father migrated when she was 2, so he became her dad. So they were very close until she saw the abuse. But I had to send her away because it got so bad where his mom started saying negative words about her. The mom started arguing, cursed me out real badly. Remember, all of us were Christians in the church. My husband, he was a drummer, the drummers screaming and nice, us Jamaicans, nice bow legs and some yes. But before the marriage, there were red flags because there were times he would have disappeared during our engagement when I would call him and he was nowhere, and his mother would make excuses for him. And I did not pay that any mind. But when my breaking point was when the women started that he had the affairs with, he started because he left the church, started having affairs, and they would see me and they would point me out and they would laugh at me, Pastor Sabine. I got depressed, suicidal thoughts, didn't want to eat as long as the night lasted. I did not sleep. I would go to work and I would be a zombie. My then boss she would call me in the office because I was working at a prep school at that time, and I would be in the classroom and I would just break down in tears. And the principal would call me and she would say, Mrs. Murphy, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. But the reality came when I snapped one night when he came in the house and he just stood at the door with both his hands on the door. You need to come out of my house because I want to move my lady in. And that night, the only thing I could remember was when he said, Sophia, what you did to me, why you did it. I did not know what I did because that was my breaking point. Even before that, I reached a point where I got a knife. He was at work. He was close to the home, so I called him and I said, where are you? And he said, he's at work. And when I went there and I saw him and I called him, I was so angry. And as I pulled the knife out, Pastor Sabine, all I saw before me was my 2 girls. When I saw were my 2 girls, I had a brother in Jamaica, but I could not say it because I knew what the outcome would be. I had nephews, but I could not say it because I knew what it would be, Pastor Sabine. And that night, I knew I had to go. I did not leave at the same time because at that point, I started building the strength. When he would come and he would say certain things, I started standing up for myself. So he realized that I was not the Sophie that he knew before. And when I really built the courage and strength to leave, when I was moving, I did not pack anything because he had moved out and he went to live with the sweetheart. So when I was going to move, I was still in the church, and I remember this church sister, she was my neighbor, so she was like a sister to me. Let me tell you, when I decided that I wasn't going to take it anymore, I was in church. And when I said to my pastor's wife, I'm not happy, you are going home with your husband. You are happy, but I'm going home to a miserable house. Scared to sleep because I didn't know what he was going to do. And when I said that to her, I wasn't going to take it anymore. Okay, it's your choice. You do what I ask you do. I dropped my hands. That was what she said. When I decided, Deacon stopped talking to me in the church. Deaconesses, choir members, praise and worship members, they all stopped talking to me. And I was mad at God because I was saying, Lord, I grew up in church, I did everything, and this is the outcome. But my strength came when I said to my then adopted sister, as I called her, I said, Sister Bloss, may I go move, you know? She said, yes. And I told her when I did not pack anything, that was over the weekend, and I planned it strategically, Pastor. My daughter's graduation was on the Sunday because it reached to the point that both my kids weren't living with me because I had to send them away. So the baby was graduating from preschool. Her graduation was a Sunday. I told her father, take her to get her hair done the Saturday and take her to me. That I planned everything. So okay, I spoke to the person who's supposed to come and help me to move. Brethren came, and that Monday when I was going to move, I just got some big boxes, and I just threw everything in the box. Didn't pack up anything, I just threw them in the boxes and I left. He did not know that I had moved out until the Wednesday. And he called, Sophia, who tell you to move out? Who tell you to move out? You don't know that you're obligated to me. And I said yes, because at that time I was so strong that there was nothing he said again that could hurt me. When I see my daughter, she wasn't talking, my daughter did not speak to me for over a year. For over a year, she did not speak to me. All my daughter spoke to me was when my mom came to Jamaica. That was all. And then when I was living on my own, she came back. And what she said to me, she said, Mommy, I am proud of you. She said, Mommy, I am proud of you because of the stand that you made. All my sisters here, there are always red flags. But because of the butterflies that we tend to feel, we tend to ignore them. Let us not ignore the red flags, because in the end, we are the ones who will be hurt. Our children, we cannot allow our children to grow up and think that this is the norm. It is not the norm. And my sister said before, and I said it after I got separated, it was best for my daughter, my baby girl, and my eldest daughter to see me happy, being apart from my ex-husband, than to be with him and see the abuse. And at first, my baby didn't understand until afterwards. So please, if it's not for your sake, do it for your kids' sake. Let them understand that there's real happiness out there. Let them see you happy by yourself as a mom and even as a dad. Okay? Bless you.
We're so happy to have you. She just took over from Mr. Nick Perry's ride. Amen. And I'm so proud of you for your great achievement. The last time you were at church was the Musicians Award. You remember me well? I'm hard to be forgotten, right? You went for great there.
She's a comedian. Well, thank you so much, and an honor to be here. I heard I got elevated tonight, but I'm actually the New York State Assembly member, Monique Chandler Waterman, and of course my mentor. I have to pay homage to him, U.S. Ambassador to Jamaica, Nick Perry. He had this seat for 30 years, and I'm blessed that he trusted me with this seat, the first Black Caribbean woman, first woman ever to hold this seat in this district. Canarsie, a little bit Brownsville, and Crown Heights. I'm blessed to be here. I'm a mother of 4 beautiful children. I have a 21-year-old, a 20, 17, and a 15-year-old. Been married over 22 years. God is good. All the time, God is good. Thank you to Apostle. Thank you to Upon the Rock Ministries. Thank you to the host church here, because events like this, it would humanize the experience for all of us and make people brave enough to come out and speak. So I had 2 questions I didn't make sure I answered today. Now that I'm elected, right, what are my plans for dealing with domestic violence, and what do you hope to bring to your community to bring enlightenment to domestic violence? So I just have to go back, Sankofa, to come forward. So I am a survivor. And so when people think about domestic violence, sometimes they think about husband and wife, but it comes in many different forms. And it comes in enabling sometimes, it comes with learned behavior. I remember when I was campaigning, I go to senior centers, I go to churches, and this lady said, I know you look familiar. Is your mother named so-and-so? I said, yeah. She watched me the first time I came back to the center again. So I want to tell you something. Your dad used to beat your mom. And I was the one who helped your mother escape. Now, I don't know this woman. She said, I used to change her Pampers, and she told me when she babysat me, my mom would bring clothes every time until she got enough to get away. Now, a lot of times when it comes to domestic violence, we love them so much. And sometimes it comes in forms of your brother, your sister, your grandfather, your cousin. It comes in family members. So what I thought as an elected official and beyond is breaking the generational cycle of trauma through community engagement. And so what does that look like? When I got into office, I was advocating way before because of what I went through. And I will tell you a little bit about my story. But also what I started to do is have public safety task force, and I have an organization called Heather Hurley Foundation, and they deal with domestic violence. Her mom was murdered by her father due to gun violence. So I remember when I first met my dad, well, it was 6, and then when I saw him as an adult, my brother and I went to his house. And he remembered some yellow curtains, and the family said, "How did you remember that?" I come to learn that that room with the yellow curtains was where my mom got beat all the time. So he was a baby when he was in this house. So now you have to think that young baby saw all of this abuse. And my mom finally left my dad when I nearly fell from her hands. So that's the way the story goes. But not only that, my grandparents on both sides, my grandfathers, were both abusing my grandparents. So learned behavior, and it becomes acceptable for the girl child, the boy child, and everybody learned this behavior. The way I was raised by my grandma, you think Medea don't have nothing on my grandmama and Tyler Perry? Because my grandmother said, when you get married, you make sure if anything happens to you, you go. Your husband try, he look at you the wrong way, you warm up them hot grits. And when he ain't looking, he's sleeping, you make sure you throw the hot grits. I learned how to be a wife through the lens of a domestic violence survivor. So my mom wasn't married at the time, my grandma was married, and now I get married. I'm a young woman, got married, and when you get married, and I was taught how to be a wife through my grandma. And God love her, she's a strong black woman. But I had to learn what it was to be a wife in a healthy relationship. So my husband looked at me the wrong way, I was ready. But then as you realize, we don't want to put something into our relationship that wasn't there. And that sometimes that learned behavior and what you see is the model. You model it good or bad. So my brother at a very early age, we promised we're not going to be like our parents. Then he had a girlfriend in a relationship. And it started to look very much like my dad and my grandparents. So what I had to do, and people make up excuses and like, no, he's angry, anger issues, it's going to be okay. I decided enough was enough. So I went a couple of years where no one in my family spoke to me. But I was good. I was real good. Because I love my brother enough. I love myself enough to make sure that he stopped the behavior before it becomes worse. So I did call the police. I did press charges. No one liked me and my family for that time for doing that, but I was going to speak out and have the voice. So my brother called me like almost every day. He would read scriptures to me. He would pray. I said, I love you. I just don't like you. Just give me some time. Later on, my brother would say to me, thank you for doing what you did. Because of you, I have changed a lot of things. Someone could have been dead. Someone could have been in the hospital, and I could have been in jail. And it took that bold step for me to do what others felt they couldn't, because we love our family so much. But breaking generational trauma for me was saying, I'm going to do what it takes in a bold move. And God is with me. Cast all your fears at Him, for He cares for you. And I was always taught to repeat that. 2 Peter 5:7, did I get it right? Okay, that's what I live by. But I was okay to be alone in this if I had to do it, because we had to stop the generational trauma. So sometimes people think it only comes in form of husband and wife. So I would tell parents, when you see your kids fighting rough and they're doing that, sometimes we think it's okay and we can just go from there. But sometimes it gets worse. And that used to be how we used to rough play. And it was way beyond rough play when my brother and I used to fight. because that's how we learn the learned behavior. So we have to make sure we're not enabling behaviors from when they are a child. And even when you think your child's not seeing it, or the kid's not seeing, they see. My brother was a baby when he could describe the room that my mom was in. So since I've been elected, I have funded that same organization, Heather Hurley. We celebrated survivors on a daily basis, and we make sure we have events to teach in self-defense, awareness of de-escalating tips, how do we express ourselves through trauma, and just making sure that we speak out as much as possible. It doesn't matter who you are, what position you hold. It happens to anyone. And please, I know it's hard to say, but don't be embarrassed. And if someone is going through it, don't judge. You never know what you're going to go through. So you need to make sure you have those conversations, make sure people feel comfortable enough to talk about it. And you just have to make sure we get support and resources. So the way we break that generational trauma is by speaking about it. In the church, speaking about it, hi darling, that's right, girl right there. Speaking about it where we go to normalize the conversation so people feel comfortable enough. And they can't do it on your terms. They got to do it on their terms. And you have to be there to support them through that process. So that's a little bit about my story, which made me be here. I love my grandfather. I love my father, and I love my brother. However, we know the behaviors weren't right. But I'm glad today that I have a great relationship with my brother. I have a wonderful relationship with my grandfather, and those behaviors do not continue. So I'm here to say I am Assemblywoman Monique Chandler Waterman. I am a survivor of domestic violence, and so can you, and so can your friends, and so can others. But it takes with us understanding that you don't know what shoes they walk in. Even though they may be dressed nice, smell nice, there's a lot that's going on. So just be kind to each other. Be kind to one another. Give people that one compliment. If you see someone that's probably thinking, they look a little down, just have a conversation. That one intervention may be that one person at that time they needed to say something, and they just was waiting for someone to acknowledge them. We see you, we hear you, we love you, and just continue supporting one another. I always say, this is not, right Georgia? This is not an I team. This is a we team. And we don't want it to come to our door. So let's be educated about it from now and be supportive to one another, because you never know what people are going to. So I love you. Thank you so much for having me and speaking. And you are forever my comedian. Thank you, Apostle, and your wonderful kids and your family here. New York State Assembly member Monique Chandler Waterman. Love you so much. Thank you.
Peace and blessings to the household of faith. How are you? Okay, so I am, how can I say this? I am overjoyed. I am overjoyed. Why am I overjoyed? Because when we start discussing the conversation of domestic violence, we have to start going back to where it started. It started with the break of our families. It started with the separation, going back to slavery. It started with the understanding that our lives and our families were not valued. And what we do in all of our lives is come from a place of brokenness and hurt and misunderstanding. And often we are given a Bible and told, as we saw in the skit, pray about it. It will change. But let me tell you something. Prayer without works, yes, means absolutely nothing. And the whole point that we have our sister to come and bring this forward and explain that the organizations, the religious organizations, quite often are not equipped to deal with this. Why? As I said, we have to go back to the beginning. When we understood what slavery was like, quite often the persons that helped the slaves that were trying to escape, to stay in slavery, was us. It were our ministers. We weren't taught to read the Bible for ourselves and understand that my God said, I am free. I am free. I'm born free. We weren't taught that we are equal at all times. And so each of us has dominion over this body temple, not dominion over each other.
That's right.
It's this body temple. It's a dominion over my thoughts. It's dominion over my emotions. It's dominion in the way I communicate and the way I show up in the world and the way I relate love and recognizing when I may need some help dealing with that. I may not know how to say, you know, the way that you touched me yesterday didn't feel so good. Or the way you looked at me didn't feel so good, right? Or to trust our gut, that when you walk into a room and you feel like, hey, I'm not being recognized in the person that I am, to have the space to speak about it, to bring your voice to it. Yes, darling. See, she seconded that. And one of the things that I want to offer as a social worker for adolescents is recognizing that part that from the beginning we were silenced. We were told not to speak. We were told to save lives, we have to keep quiet. And so our understanding of relationship was a point of control, right? How many people understand that? Yes. Right? We come from control. So because we come from control, and we were taught control was through physical force, what did we then turn around and teach our children? The exact same thing. And I'm going to talk to my ladies here. We are the keepers of the third and fourth generations. The turmoil that we go through in relationships, because we are born with every single egg that could ever possibly be fertilized and create another human, whatever we go through, our children's children marinate in. Because you are the carriers of the next generations. Who heard that? Tell me who received what I just said and understood it. Who heard that? Okay? So when you are, as our beloved publisher shared, this wasn't about her. This was about the third and fourth generation and her breaking that because her granddaughter now saw her grandmother become victorious. So her children that will be born from her granddaughter, the next two generations will come from a place of victory. So going back to change the DNA pattern, going back to change the interpersonal understanding and the way we show up as people of love. And so tonight I wanted to really speak about that because we have to come back to the foundation. We have to look at what is the post-traumatic slave syndrome and understand where it shows up in us in our daily ways of even speaking to our kids. Shut up and sit down. I didn't ask you anything. How many of us went through that? How many of us know a child's place? How many of us where children do not belong in adult conversation? Right? What if that child is warning you? What if that child is saying, I saw him hit you? What if that child is saying, I'm afraid of you right now? One of the main ways that we pass domestic violence is through the way we parent. Because we exact force to our children. And as my sister said, we pass the teaching of bad behavior.
Right.
So this book is not just a text about Apostle's life. It's to say, it's time to undo the chains that bind us. There's an amazing song about breaking the chains. And breaking the chains happens from a realization of, excuse me, who's the person putting on the chains? Right? Where's the key? And what tools do I have available to me to break the chains? Because it might be, hey, I'm trying, but I don't know where to go. How many people, when you walk into your primary care doctor's office, will say to them, you know, I haven't really been feeling myself? How many people feel comfortable doing that? Exactly. There are very few hands up. There is a program called collaborative care. I'm a collaborative care social worker. So I work with your doctors, I work with your OBGYN, I work with your community leaders in order to bring services forward, right? Because once again, as my beloved assemblyman said, it's about the outreach. So we had to come to a point of understanding collectively. We have to tap into the root and help each individual understand you are in full dominion of yourself. So if you feel, or someone feels that they have to reach out and touch you to get you to do what they want, that means there's something within them that they have not healed and they have not addressed. Women, I'm going to share this with you as a mama of 3. When we raise up our daughters, we have to raise up our sons. We have to let go of the pain of whoever was behind and teach our sons how to love the women in their lives by first learning how to love themselves. Does your son know that when he walks into the room, you light up just because he's in the room? And is he able to understand that within himself? Because once he feels confident, he's going to be able to treat a woman with confidence and speak to her in a way and communicate in a way that doesn't require physical harm. Can I get an amen on that? So those are big points for us to start with. When you go into your doctor's office, if you notice that you're feeling a little sad, instead of going home and yelling at somebody, talk to your doctor. That's right. Talk to them and say, I'd like a referral to talk to someone. Because within the community of, I like to say, my brown people, my peach people, okay, it's a big shh. You don't want anybody to know that you're going to see a social worker. Some of my parents, they will send their kids and show up at my door and say, Miss Michelle, you can only have my child once every 2 weeks, because after all, I don't want the neighbors to think they're crazy. Excuse me? That's right. What you mean? You don't want the neighbors to think instead you want your child to sit at home and suffer? They come and hang out with me and come back with you, and one of the other parts is, get involved. Show up at the appointment, the therapy appointment. It is a requirement for any parent that I'm working with, because where am I going? I'm going to the root. If something is showing up in your house with your kids, it has everything to do with where you are as a human. What is the pain? My pastor always says children come for 2 reasons. To overcome whatever we have had to deal with that we may not really wanted to deal with, and to accomplish what God has. The part that is really important is, what tools do we give them, right? Do we give them talking tools? Do we give them love tools? Do we give them hugging tools? Do we go to the root of ourselves and remember where we were hurt as little people? When we were overlooked and told, sit down and shut up, know your place as a child. Did anybody get down to our sides and say, baby, I hear you? Right? And feel confident. And a lot of our parents couldn't, because within them they were crying themselves. So tonight I wanted to talk with you and offer you something that I've been working on. I
have a little journal. It's very plain looking, right? And inside, I put together 4 sheets of paper. The first one is to explain what is domestic abuse, right? And often, most of the definitions you'll hear is, it is partner abuse, as opposed to it is a dysfunction and a malfunction within the family dynamic. And it's not limited, as we've heard, for just one man to one woman. It's not just a matter of people who are in the same bed together, because it can happen where you have someone that is abusing another person in another home, withholding money, withholding food, right? Turning off the electricity, finding ways to shut off the water, running up a credit card bill that you can't pay. Those are all forms of abuse. And those are all ways we don't talk about it. So in my work was, let's define it. And I like to do this with my kids because they always have their phone in their hands. So what do? Let's use our friend Google. What does abuse look like, right? So that's the first page. And Therapist Aid is really great because they kind of break it down in a nice colorful document. So that's one. The second thing I have is a feelings chart, because guess what? How many of you are able to say, I feel overwhelmed, and feel accepted when you say that? Feel like no one's going to judge you if you say, I feel overwhelmed right now. How many, can I see a show of hands, how many people can say that and feel like they're going to be supported through it and somebody's going to stand by them? I see only 2 hands. So I have this, and on it has different faces. On one end it says feelings when your needs are not met, and the other side says feelings when your needs are met. And so if at any point you don't know or you don't have the words to put, you can look at it and see what side you're on, and then look at the opposite side to see where you want to go to, right? Because once again, we want to start at the root. What is the root of the problem, and then how do I shift the root of the problem to now make it my strength, right? Because I can't get, as they say, an antidote unless I diagnose what the sickness is, right? So we start there. On the back side of that, I have something that's called making the decision. And it's making the decision for yourself. Making the decision that right now I'm important. Making the decision that if I go first, like when we're on the plane and they say, if it goes down, what are you supposed to do? Put the oxygen mask on who first? Exactly. Do you understand why that is, especially for our parents? Why do you put on the oxygen mask first? Let's see, who can tell me? Right. So if you have a little person you're traveling with and you put the oxygen mask on them and you pass out, can that little person carry you? So who's dying? And both of you, exactly. And that's what it's like in families that deal with domestic violence on a repetitive and, as I like to say, an aggregated scale. It's like the oxygen mask is actually being taken away and you don't have any way out of finding it. So on this form, it has the understanding, I am enough, I am smart, and I can do this. You also have to put in there, who is in your network? Do I have a pastor? Do I have a social worker? Do I have a friend I can call? Do I have someone that I can go store clothes at their house so I could plan my out? Those are things that we need to put. The next thing is, I have all the crisis numbers. 311, hashtag 988, should you feel suicidal? So you have someone that you can call that can support you through it, as well as when you can Google NYC Well, and you can have crisis therapists come to support you. So those are all things that we need. And then we look at, what are your goals, right? And what are the barriers or fears that you're facing? Because sometimes we don't want to talk about that, honestly. We all want to, dress nice, walk outside, let the Joneses see the latest thing I have on, and smile. And especially in social media time, everybody has a selfie. Everybody got a selfie. Check out where I'm eating tonight. Were you able to pay for that and feel good about it? Did you do it from a place of love? Or were you trying to actually cover some pain? That part, right? So being able to do that. And the next part is, what are your actions of love? Self-love actions. Do you get up and actually develop a prayer life, a meditation life for yourself? Not that I'm on my knees before the God of your understanding, for my husband, my wife, my children. No. This is my time to work on refilling my cup. Because you know what's so crazy? For some reason we bought into this thing that you gotta have an empty cup. Why? Who said that? And why did we buy that lock, stock, and barrel? Because it goes back to where? Slavery. We were not valuable. We didn't have cups. We didn't have cups. So now, guess what? In my house, we got a bunch of cups. We got glasses, we got mugs, we got mason jars, and we fill them up. And I encourage my children to have that time for themselves. We get together once a week and they're like, come kicking and screaming, but I said, guess what? We're gonna have once a week that is us. During the week, however you wanna pray, meditate, go for it. Once a week, I want some time with you, me, and God, right? So that's your actions of love. What are the actions of love you do for yourself? And some of the actions of love is paying attention to what our addictions are. Do I have an addiction to food? Do I have an addiction to drink? Do I have an addiction to social and outside validation? And if I have that, am I willing to change that so now I can show up as an authentic person? Paying attention to that. Bring that up in your meetings with your doctors. And they will connect you to people to support you. But if you do not say anything, we cannot walk in and do something about it. And so as I'm coming to a close, one of the things we look at is, what would you like to change? What would raise the level and elevate the consciousness in your life, your heart, your relationships? What would make you feel more whole? So being able to actually look at that for yourself and write that out. What things do you need help with? And do you know where you can get help? So having those resources. And on the bottom of the form, once again, has your emergency contact numbers. This is foldable enough that it can fit in that little brown book that nobody will even think is a journal, that you can write how you feel. Because it just looks very blah, right? It doesn't look like a fancy journal. It looks like something you just kind of picked up and walked around with. And you can put that in and journal every day so that you have a place to put your thoughts and to deal with yourself. Because guess what? Each and every one of you, you're valuable. Your presence matters, and what you have to say matters. So my name is Michelle Davis. I thank you so much for your time and attention, and God bless you all.
I have some questions here, and one of the questions is, why am I so passionate about working with women in this field? There are several reasons. One of the reasons is my mom. I just lost my mom on May 3rd, but my mom taught me a lot about being respectful. And that kind of respect goes with different things. How I carry myself, how I dress, how I address adults, how I listen to people, and so on. But one of the major things that I learned about this work was that many of the women, they look like us. And as immigrants of this country, some of us enter here and don't know the language. So off the bat, we're struggling with conversation, how to understand social cues, how to respond to people adequately. And some of us, depending on our ages, still struggle with some of these issues. So one of the things that I learned in working in this field was that many of the women who came for services were worried about different things, but didn't really mention the real problems. And when you see them walk, they're really thinking about how they can keep up so that they can be socially appropriate. And they're not mentioning the things that we can notice. Some of them may have physical or markings. Some of them may have no eye contact. Some of them may struggle in their stance. And when they speak to a person, especially to a male, they're very guarded. They're very quiet about that response. So I started learning that it is best to try my best to listen and not be judgmental, because I don't know what that person may be dealing with. And one of the biggest reasons why I got into this work, and Dr. King said it best, I think he said something like, any type of injustice is injustice everywhere. When we understand this work, we know that from that standpoint, anything that is said from a person of power to someone who is trying to get a service feels disrespectful. It looks disrespectful and it smells like it too. So when we're searching for services, some of us are struggling because we just got a divorce. We may have got up and left a domestic violence situation and now are taking Medicaid and getting services for the first time. And something that really irks me is that someone that looks like us may be at the other side of the window. And they're nasty. So that prompted me to say, I need to find ways to honor the people who come to me as if they were my own. And I would have lines of people, and it was for nonsense. How much is my Con Ed bill? Or whatever. I was able to answer these questions because I took the time to listen and to be respectful. And one of the things that drives me to this is that every person that is here, and today we just heard from a great author, Apostle Sterling, is a person who I look up to. And meeting her one time, I was able to understand that she was a woman of power and of dignity. But she said to me, I don't believe I am. I think I'm nervous. And I was like, what? I haven't even written a book. How could you tell me you're nervous? One of the things that I find is that when people are their true selves is when they are the most vulnerable. So do you who have power in moments, whether it is in a place of worship, whether you work in a hospital, whether you are a service provider, please treat your people with respect, especially our women. I've never had a male boss. That's another thing. I've always worked for women. Women are in power and they will stay in power and they will continue to grow. So it's best that we start working with them and not against them. One of the biggest things that I find in doing this work and why I wake up every day eager to do it is because of stories like this. Here we are, total strangers in a room, but we're breaking bread together, we're smiling, we're shaking hands, we're nodding. We're doing the things that families should be doing. So just imagine a person who is going through struggle, they can't get that at home. And we, as providers, as the first person in line that they see, we're not going to be respectful. That person may be going into trouble and they may require help and we are refusing to do that. So please, I ask all of you, we have more power than we think, even as family members. Respect everyone and treat them with respect, because you don't know, that same person may be the person who will save your life tomorrow. One of the things that I want to also talk about is that although we're celebrating tonight that this is an event that most likely will not be the same type of event that we will be celebrating. It's very sad that domestic violence will have to continue. We will have to continue the fight. As of 2007-8, when I began to do this work, I noticed that I was the only male that was walking in these marches. And I began to bring my daughter years prior next to say, hey, we need to make a stand. And we started to see other men join. And the reason why I say that is we men, we get a bad rap because there are many times that men are trying to do the right thing, but we're paying the price for the 2 or 3 that are not doing the right thing. So because of those reasons, I want to stand up here and say it is vital that we continue to encourage the people who are seeking help. Please find them help, because these men, what they need is really help. A lot of them are just running through a cycle that they learned from ancestors and generations. We must find ways to seek help. That does not mean we have to stay in relationships like this. We just have to be in a situation that we point them in the right direction. The little that we do can go a long way. I've been in circumstances that unfortunately men have thought that I'm after their women. In many instances, I've been accused of doing certain things. But one thing I will tell you for sure, I will never turn my back on a woman who needs my help. I don't care what they think. Never, never. God forbid, it may even cost me who knows what. But if I'm going to walk the walk and talk the talk, I have to be able to stand near that woman. When she goes for that help, I have to make sure that I stay there every step of the way. It is vital that we don't turn our backs. I started showing my clients these tips. When you go to a provider, I want you to build these codes, because if you're with the abuser and you're at the doctor's office, I want you to start doing certain things, and I'm gonna call the doctor and say, if you see my client go like this, that means that it's not safe. So not to make them know that we were doing it always, I would change the signs as if we were playing baseball. But it would allow the women to feel safer, giving them the tools to go somewhere of a place of trust and begin to think, this other person, they're gonna know who I am. What I've seen is that domestic violence goes unreported. There are many times that an argument ensues and it can escalate. And because I don't want to be deported, I don't want my kids to be taken away, I don't want to deal with DCF, he already has a record, whatever happens, I don't make the call. So the numbers that we see as stats are superficial. Unfortunately. And the ones that we do know about are always media written, and sadly is because someone has lost their life or someone got hurt so severely that the news needed to report it so that we can hear it. We have to find ways. So for us, whether it's a house of worship or a hospital, whether it's the grocery store, find that support person and create a code to let that person know that you don't feel safe. Touch yourself somewhere. Make that code happen between you and that provider so that they can make the call for you. And you can stay out of trouble. At least one more day can probably save your life. Remember to go to these places. If you're not able to report, make a call on behalf of someone to support them. And a lot of us don't want to say, oh, I don't want to get involved with people because they're married. But we already heard. If you don't take that first step, that person may not show up on Sunday to church as they were supposed to. Stay together, be together. Because like I said before, we're strong as individuals, but unstoppable when we unite. Thank you so much.